TV personality Jill Dando, who as Crime Watch presenter helped to send dozens of criminals to jail, was murdered on her own doorstep today. She was killed by a single gunshot to her head.
Jill Dando was one of Britain's most beloved personalities, an accomplished journalist with a warm smile and a kind demeanour. A national treasure who graced millions of homes as a TV presenter. But on the morning of April the 26th, 1999, her life was tragically cut short in a murder that remains unsolved to this day. Controversy and speculation showered this event, and questions remained unanswered. Until now. Welcome to Beau Videos and episode 9 in the Alternative Views series, Who Murdered Jill Dando? Finally, the heart-wrenching truth. Often referred to as the golden girl of British television, Jill, according to the BBC, was, quote, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Is that a fact? Well, come with me as we take a good look and piece together what actually happened and who exactly is attempting to cover it all up. Jill was born in 1961 in the Somerset seaside town of Weston-super-Mare. Growing up, she was a popular, intelligent student and gained A-levels before going on to study journalism in Cardiff. She enjoyed amateur dramatics and volunteered at Sunshine Hospital Radio in her hometown. That was when many realised, including herself, that presenting in the media was her destiny. Her father and brother worked for the local weekly newspaper, the Western Mercury, and Jill joined them as a trainee reporter. After a few short years, Jill managed to get a job as a newsreader for the BBC on BBC Radio Devon. Less than a year on, and she found herself moving up and across to BBC Southwest, presenting a regional news magazine programme, Spotlight Southwest. Jill's beauty and charisma caught the eye of the BBC executives, and she moved up yet again, this time to national television, and became a newsreader for the BBC. Her personality shone, and the public was beginning to take notice. Jill started presenting the news on breakfast time TV, and instead of the hourly short-form news, was promoted to the longer on-the-hour news programmes at 1 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Before she knew it, other ventures came her way and other projects developed. Holiday, BBC's successful travel destination programme, was something she could not turn down. This led to one of BBC's most coveted jobs, presenting Crime Watch UK. In 1995, Jill Dando joined the Crime Watch team, helping to solve some of Britain's most notorious and also most recent unsolved crimes. Viewers soon got the impression that she would not hold back and would tell it how it was. She was like a breath of fresh air. In 1996, her 5-year relationship with BBC executive Bob Wheaton ended, and not long after met gynaecologist Alan Farthing. Farthing was separated from his wife at the time, and when his divorce was finalised, the two announced their engagement in January 1999. Their wedding was set for September the same year. Sadly, though, this wedding was not to take place, as on the morning of the 26th of April 1999, 37-year-old Dando was shot and killed on the doorstep outside her Fulham home. The British public were in shock. She had left Farthing's home in Chiswick earlier that morning. After doing a bit of shopping and filling her car with fuel, she returned alone, just a short journey by car, to her house she owned at Gowan Avenue in Fulham. It had become a rarity as she was in the process of selling her home, and she spent most of her time living at Farthing's house. Before setting out that morning, Jill received a telephone call from her agent, John Roseman. He informed her that he had faxed over some contract documents to her home to be signed. That was the reason for her visit. So, before we get into the case, in which the investigators claim that no one knew she was going to be at her home that morning, straight off, that is a lie. Because already there were at least 2 folk who knew she was going to be there, her fiancé and her agent. We'll come back to that. Anyhow, at approximately 11:30 that morning, Jill approached her front door and was confronted from behind, and a lone gunman shot her in the head. Jill laid there for nearly a quarter of an hour before one of her neighbours discovered her and phoned 999. Jill was taken to nearby Charing Cross Hospital and died en route and was declared dead on arrival. Despite decades of investigation, theories ranging from professional hitmen to stalkers, and even connections to Serbian war criminals, no definitive answers have been found. This in itself is strange. Broad daylight, shot, high profile BBC celebrity, none of it adds up, does it? Oh, but it does. There happens to be coincidences, and if you've seen some of my other videos, you know what I'm like with coincidences. First, let's have a look at the discovery of Jill's body. It was found by Helen Doble. When Helen spotted Jill Dando's car parked outside her home, she took it as a rare opportunity to pop in and see her friend. Now, Helen Doble found Jill's lifeless body around 14 minutes after the murder. You would assume Helen lived next door on first hearing. But no. According to an interview with Helen Doble by the Mirror newspaper, Helen Doble lived 2 streets away. She could not see Jill's home from her house. So, okay, did she walk by and see her car parked outside and decided to go home and come back to see Jill within the 14-minute time frame? Don't forget, Jill was murdered before she got to put the key in her front door, almost immediately. So how did Helen Doble know Jill was there at her home? Plus, she also states in the same interview that she did not try and help Jill Dando, as she knew she was already dead and did not want to disturb the crime scene. Well, first off, Jill wasn't dead. Jill died on the way to the hospital, not at the scene. And second, who told her at the time it was a crime? How did she know Jill hadn't just collapsed with a seizure or something similar? Oh, and Helen Doble happened to work in television also as a producer. Maybe all that is nothing, but surely questions need answers, right? Richard Hughes, Jill's actual next door neighbour, gave an eyewitness account of that fateful morning. He is on record, the Standard newspaper, as seeing a 40-year-old white male, about 6 foot tall, leaving Jill's home at the same time of the murder. He looked out of his window after hearing a woman scream. Why didn't Richard Hughes, after hearing screams and a man walking away from Jill Dando's front yard, go and check? Plus, these are small front yards. If he looked out and saw the man, would it not be feasible for him to have seen Jill's body also? Unless, of course, he didn't see the man. Just thinking outside the box, that's all. After it was determined that Jill Dando was murdered, the biggest manhunt in Britain since the Yorkshire Ripper back in the 80s was launched. From the get-go, Operation Oxborough, as it was known, proved fruitless. Things didn't seem quite right. The public was worried. A daylight shooting of a celebrity, and they had no answers. There was now huge speculation regarding the motives for her murder. The most obvious was her involvement in the TV show Crime Watch UK. Folk were assuming the show had caused the criminal world to fear Jill Dando and to probably hate her. Around Europe, Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic was getting tight on foreign and Serbian journalists. It was alleged that he was hiring a hitman to go around and deal with the problem. Journalism was not even allowed to create satire about Serbia. Where have we seen that before? It was touted that Milosevic had hired a man named Milorad Ulemek. Tabloids and certain news stations ran with this theory. They assumed Jill Dando had upset these dangerous folk in an episode of Crime Watch. Ulemek is now in jail in Serbia, serving a life sentence for unrelated crimes. He has denied any involvement in Jill Dando's murder, and there is no evidence to suggest he was ever in the UK. Do you not think a hitman who is now serving life in prison would be proud to tag the Jill Dando murder to his belt? I think he would, but he hasn't. And no other Serbian group has come forward to claim the kill, but it still remains a theory to this day. The lead investigator of the case was Hamish Campbell. He was under pressure from the tabloids, the public, and her family, work-wise and immediate, from the very start. Tons of leads were followed, hundreds of people were questioned, and then suddenly a suspect, one that answered all of Mr. Campbell's dreams, entered the fray: Barry Bulsara. Bulsara, real name Barry George, was a known stalker who lived less than a mile away from Jill Dando's home. He had previous. He had a history of stalking women, sexual offences, and other antisocial and attention-seeking behaviour. Hamish Campbell had Barry George put under surveillance, and in May 2000 they arrested him for the murder of Jill Dando. They searched his home and found numerous items linking him to Jill's murder. Pictures of celebrities cut out of several publications included Jill. Although a firearm was never found, gun residue in a coat pocket was. The evidence on Barry George was beginning to conveniently mount up. Although the evidence was circumstantial, George was tried at the Old Bailey, convicted, and in July 2001 was sentenced to life imprisonment. His defence attorney was none other than Michael Mansfield. Michael Mansfield had worked on numerous notable cases before, including the Stephen Lawrence case, the Michael Barrymore inquest, and even helping Mohammed Al-Fayed in the inquest into the deaths of his son Dodi Al-Fayed and Diana, Prince of Wales. Bit of a come down, Barry George, huh? Concerns about this conviction was widespread on the basis that the case against George appeared far too thin. It was suggested that the investigation team had ignored other vital evidence in George's pursuit. 2 appeals by George's solicitors were unsuccessful, but after discredited forensic evidence was excluded from the prosecution's case, George's 3rd appeal succeeded in November 2007. The original conviction was quashed, and a second trial lasting nearly 8 weeks ended in Barry George's acquittal in August 2008. Although not a nice man, had the powers that be thought they had found the perfect scapegoat so they could brush the real reason for Jill Dando's murder under the elite red carpet. 9 years on, and the case was now back to square one. During this Barry George debacle, a former family liaisons officer with Surrey Police, Mark Williams Thomas, got involved. This is the same Mark Williams Thomas who would later be unduly accredited with exposing Jimmy Savile, covering up the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, and many more high-profile cases. He worked for ITV, and his head would pop up whenever he could smell stardom. Williams Thomas began spreading rumours that a London gangster he named Mr. Big was responsible for Jill Dando's murder. Was this a ploy by the media to divert attention away from the real reasons yet again? Bear in mind, in 2003, Williams Thomas was charged with blackmailing a funeral home director after alleging that there were multiple bodies buried in unmarked graves. An article ran in a national Sunday paper describing the mass burials. He was subsequently acquitted. The words smoke and fire spring to mind for some reason, along with I owe you one. Whenever this bloke emerges, you can virtually guarantee a cover-up. I wouldn't trust this man, that's for sure. In 2011, the public started bringing up Jimmy Savile. Everything about Jimmy Savile's evil crimes, including his possible links to the Yorkshire Ripper, was being exposed. The public began to put 2 and 2 together. Was Jill Dando about to expose Jimmy Savile while he was still alive? Had the BBC got wind of this? The public had a point, and a very valid point. The BBC didn't want Savile's crimes against children and the like to be known while he was alive. They employed him, for Pete's sake. He was one of their own. From that day on, especially the armchair investigators ran with this theory. Let's face it, as far as Jimmy Savile goes, the BBC have not been forward with it. They know things, I'm sure of it, and it's things they don't want you to know. Let's not forget some of the coincidences here. The person that found Jill's murdered body lived 2 streets away, was a TV producer. Jill had dated a top BBC executive before meeting her fiancé. Barry George's defence included top brass Michael Mansfield. Mark Williams Thomas started getting involved. Her fiancé served as surgeon gynecologist to Queen Elizabeth II's royal household, the said royal household that were top friends of Jimmy Savile, and before the trolls hit, yes they were. Plus the bloke, Barry George, who was wrongly convicted of Jill Dando's murder, had a previous conviction of being found on the grounds of a royal household with a letter or poem to the then Prince of Wales at the time, King Charles. I can't seem to find the contents of this poem anywhere online. I'd be very interested to know what it contained, if anybody knows. Things by now were definitely not adding up, and they still don't add up today, and the questions still keep coming. Jill Dando's post-mortem revealed that she had bruises to the top of both of her arms. This suggests she was held tightly by her arms and possibly shook violently. Did the killer, stroke hitman, have time to do this? Would he have wanted to do this? Did he need to do this? Or were these bruises caused at another time before she was killed? Now, I've watched Crime Watch UK, the show Jill Dando was presenting before her death, and I can say with confidence that high-profile cases, when not solved, get airtime over and over again. The Madeleine McCann case being just one of note. So how come the Jill Dando murder, the murder of the show's very own presenter, only gets aired once? Do they not, or have they been told not, to pry? You never know what leads you can generate on that programme, right? That's the whole point of the programme, right? Personally, even though she worked for the BBC, and I obviously didn't know her directly, I liked Jill Dando. I liked the way she presented, and I liked the way she came across as always having time for others not in her circle. So the questions remain. Was Jill killed by a hitman? Was it just a random killing by a random individual? Or was she about to expose something big, something others would kill to be hidden? You be the judge. The murder of Jill Dando is more than just an unsolved crime. It's a reflection of a societal uncertainty and the limits of justice. While answers may still elude us, her legacy as a journalist and a compassionate individual lives on. When, or if commenting, the importance of respecting the memory of Jill Dando and those affected by the tragedy must come first. Please remember that. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you think I've missed anything, please let me know in the comments. Plus, let me know what you think. Why do you think she was murdered? Don't forget, click the like button so other like-minded folk get to see the video, and check you're still subscribed. They're doing it again to me. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.